On Thursday, voters will go to the polls in the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse Holyrood by-election. It will be the biggest test of Scottish public opinion since last year's Westminster election. The ballot follows the death of the local MSP and Government Minister Christina McKelvie. At the 2021 Scottish Parliament election, she held on to the seat for the SNP with a majority of 4,500 over Labour. In recent Scottish opinion polls, there are 6 parties enjoying significant support. We invited each of their by-election candidates to join us for a debate, an opportunity for them to defend themselves and question their opponents. STV has hosted by-election hustings many times, but in this contest, 4 of the 6 candidates have declined to cross swords. But we are pleased to have with us the SNP's candidate Katie Loudon and Reform UK's candidate Ross Lambie. Thanks both for joining us in the studio tonight. We'll hear from the other candidates, or some of the other candidates, a bit later. But first, can I ask you both, what's been the big issue on the doorsteps of Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse? Katie Loudon, you first. So
thanks very much, Colin. It's very much been cost of living for people and feeling let down. So a lot of people have spontaneously spoken to us about the winter fuel payment. They're feeling let down by Labour. They might have voted for a change last summer, and the performance of the UK Labour government over the past few months has not been particularly impressive. People are feeling let down by Labour at a national level, and they're feeling let down by decisions that the council have taken at a local level. And it's fair to say that many people are scunnered. They're scunnered in this by-election. Ross Lambie, what are you getting on the doorsteps?
Yeah, it's a real across-the-board dissatisfaction with the whole political establishment. They feel that there's been a lost generation. You know, they feel that they're in danger of having another lost generation. They're not seeing any offers from any of the political establishment which gives them hope for the future of their kids. And they're getting to breaking point. And the one thing that I'm getting on the doors is a sense of urgency. And they feel that the current political establishment don't have that sense of urgency. But when they speak to Reform, we are saying, yes, it's urgent. We need to do some big decisions just now, make some big changes. And that's why people are kind of being excited by it, the new guys on the block, which is Reform. Well, STV debates always allow for cross-examination. So, Katie Loudon, you have a couple of minutes to question Ross Lambie.
Thank you. Thanks, Ross. So, do you agree with what Farage has said about scrapping free prescriptions and free university tuition?
No, I don't think so. In Scotland, we've got a devolved administration. Our manifesto will not be scrapping anything in Scotland along those lines. Nigel's very passionate about the NHS, as you know, in our manifesto, which we contested the UK general election on.
So you don't agree with the comments that he's made on either of these issues?
Like for the Scottish manifesto, we'll have a Scottish offering which will respect the devolved status.
For this by-election just now, do you agree with the comments that Farage made only earlier today on both of these issues?
No, like I said, was a devolved issue, and we know when we get Reform MSPs into Holyrood, they'll be following our own course on that issue, and those things are devolved, and that'll be down to our Reform MSPs.
For the people who are watching this tonight, for the people who are going to be voting in this by-election in just a few days' time,
yep.
What are they voting for at the moment? What's your position?
On the NHS, well, Nigel's been crystal clear on this. It's in our contract policy, which we contested a general election across the whole of the UK and Scotland on, that NHS will be free at the point of use, always. There's no equivocation about that. And in fact, in our policy contract doesn't say that at all. It says it'll always be free at the point of use. And in fact, our policies actually include more resources for the NHS than any other party, including the SNP.
So Farage is on record saying that he wants to move away from a taxation-based system to an insurance-based system with people paying twice. I have seen no appetite. There is not a single person who's going to be voting on Thursday who's interested in seeing any change and move towards an insurance-based system. And so you disagree with Farage?
No, Nigel Farage hasn't actually said that. If you look at our contract policy...
He's on record saying that.
No, you're taking it out of context, because if you want to get into the intellectual point Nigel was making, if you look at the size of the public sector in healthcare in the UK and the private sector and look at it as a whole and compare it to a country, say as Germany, it's about half the size. So we're saying we need investment in the healthcare industry as a whole.
Through private insurance?
No, not at all. That's why.
Katie, that's your 2 minutes up. Ross Lambie, you now have 2 minutes or a couple of minutes to question Katie Loudon.
Thanks so much. Hi, Katie. My young daughter was born in the neonatal unit in Wishaw. It was quite a long and difficult birth, and we were reassured because we had that specialist unit there. And why do you want to take that away from the doorstep in this constituency and move it to Glasgow?
Yeah, so speaking as a parent as well, Ross, and I'm glad that your daughter is doing so well. I would start off by saying that the work which the staff do in Wishaw is absolutely fantastic. It's incredible what they do.
So why would you move it away?
We are standing in this by-election to represent our communities, and as part of that we would get to scrutinise expert opinion that comes before us. My background's in teaching, Ross. I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor.
But I'm talking about the neonatal unit in Glasgow.
I'm not a clinician.
Can you answer the question why you want to move it away and move it to the other side of Glasgow? Because it's going to endanger the young babies in here.
I'm not a doctor, a nurse, I'm not a clinician.
Okay,
what
so
my job to do...
If you can't answer that one, then I'll ask you about the winter fuel allowance, because...
I would like to continue to my answer, Ross.
As we know, Labour's not here tonight to answer for their reason for taking away.
Absolutely.
It's a devolved issue, and you could have chosen to make those savings from anywhere in the Scottish budget. Why did you choose to make savings off the backs of pensioners and put them into fuel poverty?
We know very much what has happened with the winter fuel payment. You've been out speaking to people in this constituency as much as I have.
You've got the power to change
there is a real
instantly.
anger. There is a real anger with what the UK Labour government have done. And it's not only on this issue. They have chosen to balance their books on the back of some of the most vulnerable people in our society.
So
and the SNP government is putting winter fuel payment back into place.
Final question then, if I may. Police Scotland came out and said that they'd be willing to let football fans have a beer in the football stands once again, but within seconds John Swinney came out and said, no way. How come you're so snobby against football fans?
Sorry, snobby?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's a very...
Why did John Swinney say you can't do it? You let people drink beer in rugby, let them drink, they've got a special £500 corporate box, but don't you realise, like for a local team here, like Hamilton Accies, you're putting a strain on their finances by blocking them from that?
Your 2 minutes up, but let her answer.
Thank you. I visited Hamilton Accies a couple of weeks ago, a fantastic club. This is really a matter, again, now to go back to the question which you didn't let me answer and didn't let me finish my answer a minute or so ago, Ross. This is about listening to expert opinion. And it's about taking evidence from Police Scotland and listening to what their opinion is. In the same way too, when we're speaking about Wishaw, it's about making sure that we are listening to the expert opinions and we're taking that advice when we're making those really difficult and really complex decisions.
You've answered this question.
Thanks, Colin.
I think we need to open the debate up a bit now. So one of the things that will be coming up for whoever is elected is a vote on assisted dying. How would you have voted on it the first time, or how would you vote on it the second time if you were the MSP? Yeah,
based on the information at hand, I think I would have voted against it for one reason and one reason only. I think palliative care needs a greater focus. I don't think we've exhausted all avenues on palliative care. I think that sector of our healthcare has been diminished, and the amount of hospices around the country is reduced dramatically. And it's such a specialist area. I think we need to invest in that first, and then it could be something we could revisit once we've exhausted that avenue.
Katie Loudon, how would you vote on it?
This is such an incredibly sensitive issue, and it's one which people have been very keen to hear my opinions. A lady visited our hub this afternoon, and I sat and spoke to her for about 15 minutes, and we shared our own experiences. And really, when Parliament were discussing this at stage one, it was some of the best debate and discussion. It truly was Parliament at its best. Had I been, as I've said when I've been asked this question by residents and by the press so far, I would have voted at stage one to continue the debate and the discussion. For me personally, and this is a very personal issue, and people are, we're bringing our personal experiences and the experiences of our constituents to this debate. I would need to be reassured about safeguards which are in place, and I would want that discussion to continue, but I'm not convinced that it would be an easy piece of legislation to get right.
When I've been out in Hamilton, there's been a great deal of anger from the voters at all the parties, and one of the things they're angry at is that they just don't feel they're getting what they want from the NHS. Katie Loudon, NHS Lanarkshire has the second worst record in Scotland on A&E, 54.4% of patients dealt with in 4 hours. 69% across Scotland. The target's 95%. Do you owe patients in Lanarkshire an apology?
So I have spoken to literally thousands of people over the past couple of weeks, and NHS is something which people are really keen to speak about. And a few short weeks ago, I had a really interesting, really in-depth conversation with a paramedic who was wanting to speak to us about that.
She was an apology too.
One of the points that she was really keen to make, it's about getting things right all the way through the system. That's what improves patient flow. Now, I'm not going to sit here.
That's not happening.
I'm not going to sit here.
That's not happening. So do you owe staff and patients an apology?
I'm not going to sit here, Colin, and pretend things are perfect. The difference
Are you going to sit there and apologise to them?
between the SNP and the other parties.
Are you going to sit there and apologise to them?
The difference between the SNP and the other parties in this election is the most important thing to myself at the moment is the fact that we are out, we're listening to people and we are delivering for people. We're listening to their concerns, we're understanding their concerns, and we're taking action. We haven't heard much from the other candidates on what they would do to improve the health service.
But I'm asking you tonight, are you going to apologise?
I am proud that I can go out and speak to people and say we're putting in an extra 150,000 appointments to cut down waiting lists, because that has to happen. And we've not been getting it right in all cases, and that's what people want to see. They're interested in delivery. They're interested. They're not interested in all of the rhetoric around it. They're interested to see change. And I'm proud to be standing for a party that are putting things in place, like 100,000 extra.
You're not going to give them an apology tonight. Ross Lambie, are you embarrassed by the attack adverts that you've taken out against Anas Sarwar, which have been branded by almost all the other parties in this by-election as racist?
Well, I think Anas Sarwar is a man who wants to be the First Minister for the whole of Scotland, and I think it's quite right. The things he says, the speeches he gives is held up to the highest scrutiny. We've done that. We've given our view on it.
An apology for misquoting him at times.
We never misquoted him at all.
Oh, you said that this was something he'd said in a speech, and he hadn't actually officially said that.
No, we didn't say that.
What did you say then?
The title on it was our opinion of it. It was not in quotations, so yeah. It was
so you don't think you've got anything to apologise to Anas Sarwar for?
No, absolutely not. What I'd say is he wants to be the First Minister of the whole of Scotland, and his speeches are going to be held to account, and we've given our view on it. Everyone can go away home tonight, watch it, and they can have their own view on it.
You admitted yourself on the radio just last week that those weren't his words, which you had portrayed as his words.
No, we didn't portray them as his words. The BBC were incorrect about the quotations.
You said that yourself on the radio.
But you said on that radio interview that he hadn't said that the way that you said he had.
The video has a title, which is our opinion, and that's our scrutiny on the speeches he's given.
So it's not his words, it's your opinion?
Yes, correct.
Today, your leader was in Scotland. He said he didn't think you'd win this by-election. Initially, he said he thought you'd come third. Then he said he thought you'd come second. He's not got much confidence in you, does he?
Well, you're right. We started on this journey, and we weren't quite sure if we'd be able to get our message through to the voters. And you know what? We're picking up a lot of support, and none of the support is pigeonholed or boxed off to certain areas. The support, I'm really proud to say, is coming from across all the sectors of the community. And we started off thinking, yeah, maybe we'll knock the Tories down a peg. That'll be a big story. And then now we're thinking we're going to knock the Labour down, and now we're closing in on the SNP. We're getting very close to them.
You know what? I'd come back to you, but I've run out of time. Thanks both for joining us in the studio tonight, though. Now we turn to other parties. When they told us they wouldn't take part in the debate, we, in the interest of programme balance, offered the Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem and Green candidates individual interviews. The Green candidate declined, but the other three accepted. Here's the Scottish Labour candidate, Davy Russell. Davy Russell, you've been focused on chapping the doors. What time do you chap the doors at night until?
About 8:30.
So you could be in an STV studio at 10:30 then to do a debate?
Well, when you finish your door chapping for the day, usually 4 sessions I do. I've been processing the casework for that particular day, and I usually pick up a dozen items to do. But it was my decision.
You could be in the studio at 10:30 to do a debate with your other candidates in this by-election.
I took a conscious decision. It's not about me talking to the other candidates or the electors. It's about listening as well. And in a debate, you can't listen. And that's been my strength, listening to the people who have been ignored for years.
So you're saying you couldn't listen if you were in a debate? You could listen to your opponents. You could maybe even consider holding them to account.
We have been listening to the opponents for years. The SNP have been in power for 18 years and they haven't done
But it looks like you're dodging debates. You haven't taken part in one single debate during this entire by-election. I've never seen the like.
Definitely not. It was a conscious
decision. But you are dodging them.
But
you're not taking part in ours tonight. You're not taking part in community debates. You're dodging the debates.
I took a conscious decision to make this a back to basics campaign where I was listening as much as I was talking.
The people in the constituency, if they can't see you standing up for yourself against them, how can they see you standing up for them in Parliament?
Well, as I said at the start, I've been listening to the people. I hear the issues that the people have been talking about.
But also they want to know that you can speak on their behalf, and they're not seeing you doing that.
Well, they'll see me tonight when I'm getting interviewed by you.
Well, what are you going to tell them that you're going to do for them? Because it's all very well listening. You've got to tell them what you're going to do as well.
Yes, Hamilton Town Centre. The SNP candidate voted against an £8 million to kickstart the redevelopment. Right, that while it might take £50 million to do it, that was to start it. SNP voted against it.
On the council?
On the council. But that's a start.
But what are you going to do for the people of Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse in the Scottish Parliament?
In the Scottish Parliament, their voices and concerns will be listened to, because I will make sure that the other parliamentarians hear me.
How would you represent them on something that's coming up in the Parliament, the assisted dying vote? How would you vote on that?
As it stands at present, I would vote against it.
Are you worried about child poverty? That's something that's a big issue for the Scottish Parliament to deal with.
Yes. Child poverty is a scourge of this modern society.
The quickest way to deal with child poverty, or to tackle child poverty, according to all the charities involved in that sector, is to scrap the two-child benefit cap. Are you disappointed Labour haven't done that?
Scottish Labour have always supported scrapping the two-child cap.
And yet in government they've failed to deliver that.
What I will say is that it's not just about benefits to lift people out of poverty.
Right, but you're against it, and your government hasn't delivered that. Your government's not even paying attention to what you're saying.
The Westminster government have said that all options are on the table.
Yes, but they haven't scrapped it. They've had almost a year in government, a year to do that. You want them to do it. Scottish Labour want them to do it, and Aisha wants them to do it. They're not paying the slightest attention to you.
The Scottish Government get £5.2 billion extra in this year's financial settlement. They could have scrapped it on the 1st of April if they so wished.
So you're quite happy for the Scottish Parliament to mitigate what Westminster does on that, for example?
But they got the additional money and they can spend it in whatever way they see fit.
When you go round the doors, you're probably speaking to quite a lot of older people. Are you getting any anger from them that Labour have scrapped their winter fuel allowance?
Yes, there is
what do you
some
say
concern.
To them?
Well, there's some concern, and Scottish Labour have said from day one that we will reinstate the winter fuel allowance.
But at Westminster you've scrapped it, so again you'd have to mitigate what your government did at Westminster.
But there were hard decisions to be made when the Labour government came into power in Westminster. There was a.
So you think they were right to scrap it?
There was a 20
Do you think they were right to scrap it?
There was a 20
Do you think they were right to scrap
pound
it?
black hole.
Do you think they were right to scrap the winter fuel payment for pensioners?
There were hard decisions to take.
Do you think they were right?
Well, there were very hard decisions to take.
Do you think they were right to do it? It was a hard decision. Do you think they made the right decision?
Well, they took it based on the decisions, the circumstances they'd inherited.
So you backed them? You backed the Chancellor, you backed the Prime Minister on it?
They had very hard decisions to make.
And you backed them?
I totally think that the decisions they had to make were based on the previous government's mismanagement of the country.
And you backed them on it?
On the doorsteps here, people are...
yeah, but you back the government, you back the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. You can just tell me yes or no.
Well, I wasn't involved in the decision, and this is a Scottish Parliament election, right? If I was a member of Parliament then, I would have based it on the facts I had in front of me at the time. Right now, I'm not standing for Westminster, I'm standing for the Scottish Parliament.
And thanks very much for joining us in Scotland tonight.
Thank you.
Next up is the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party candidate, Richard Nelson. Richard Nelson, why won't you take part in the studio debate on STV tonight?
I work for the NHS. I have worked for the NHS for 25 years. I have work commitments. I still work for the NHS full time.
So you're on shift tonight?
I'm on shift tonight. I'm also a local councillor and I have a family. So trying to fit all these into all the hype of a by-election at the same time. So I'm trying to concentrate on my by-election campaign and speak to the people on the doors as much as I can. So working for the NHS has its challenges.
When you're knocking on doors, talking to people in the constituency, What do they want from you, and what are you promising them if you get elected?
I'm not promising them anything. What I am saying to them is that I will continue to fight for the local people and local issues, as I have done in the past 8 years.
But what are the
as a
local issues
councillor.
you're talking to them about?
So what we're speaking about on the doorstep, what I have found, is the failing NHS, the broken National Health Service, as well as local issues about roads and pavements and the underfunding of the services within the councils.
So these are all council issues you're talking to people about. Are you talking to them about Scottish Parliament issues at all?
I just said I was speaking about the NHS, which is a devolved power. That is not a council issue, and I can see firsthand how that is affecting the local people in my constituency. And that's where I'm not promising anything, but that's where I'm saying I will take that fight, because I know how much the NHS means to people within that local constituency, and people are telling me that they are broken.
But you've got nothing to offer them in terms of a solution.
Well, I do have a solution, and my solution is about making that frontline money come to the frontline services. As an NHS employee, I see daily basis how money is wasted within the National Health Service. We get millions and billions of pounds put into the NHS, but it disappears rapidly to that. And for me, it's
about... Where does it go?
Well, that's the question, Colin. Where does it go? So for me, it's about bringing that into the frontline services. Frontline nursing staff are getting the hard end of the stick all the time.
If you win, one thing that would be coming up in the Scottish Parliament is assisted dying. How would you vote?
I have not looked at the assisted dying bill closely enough to make my informed decision at this point. There's so much to come through that bill.
How would you have voted at stage one?
I can't comment at that at this stage, because I didn't have that knowledge of that assisted dying bill, and I still need to look at the specifics behind it all.
You've been very upfront during the campaign about being a member of the Orange Order. Will you be marching over the next few weeks?
I will continue to fight for the people of Larkhall and
That's
that
not what I asked you.
constituency.
Will you be marching? You're a member of the Orange Order.
As I've said already, I'm a proud member of the organisation, and I will continue to fight for everyone in our community. I'm not here to speak about the Orange Order.
I'm just asking you about that. Just you as a person. Will you be marching with them?
I'm not here to speak about the Orange Order. I'm here to speak about the campaign.
Can you not tell me if you're going to be marching?
I'm here to speak about the campaign that I am fighting for the people.
And when you're speaking to people, if you're speaking to Catholic voters, do they feel intimidated by the Orange Order marches and things like that?
I represent everyone in that constituency, and that's what I'll continue to do. People who come to my surgeries, never have I asked what religion or what faith. Most recently I have been with the Indian Council, I've been with the Sudanese Council.
On that, let me ask you on that. Are you worried about the rise of Reform and the attacks that they've made on Sarwar, for example, during this by-election?
I haven't watched anything of those clips. That, for me, is Nigel Farage trying to make a frenzy into Scottish politics. For me,
have you watched any of the campaign coverage?
I have seen snippets of things. I haven't watched the full video of what people are talking about. Maybe once this campaign is by with, then I'll be able to sit down and actually have a moment to, because I'm still working for the NHS. I'm trying to deal with local constituency issues, and that's what we'll continue to do.
But just finally, I mean, do you think that the campaign that they have launched against Sarwar is racist?
I am here to fight a campaign.
But do you think it's racist?
I'm here to fight a campaign on what I think people are talking to me on the doorsteps.
But do you think the campaign that they're fighting is racist in this by-election?
People are telling me in the doorsteps. Nobody speaks about that media clip. In the doors that I have knocked over the past 4 or 5 weeks, nobody has spoken to me about any of those clips. People are interested in the NHS that has been broken by the SNP Scottish Government, but also they're speaking about local issues that I've already spoken to you about. These are the things that matter. That doesn't matter to the people.
Richard Nelson, thanks for joining us in Scotland Tonight.
Thank you.
The last candidate we're hearing from tonight is the Scottish Liberal Democrat, Aisha Meir. Aisha Meir, why haven't you been willing to take part in the STV debate in studio here?
There's not been an unwillingness on my part. It wasn't a convenient date for me. I had family commitments, unfortunately. But there was not any sort of decision to not attend.
Does it mean, it means though that you don't get a chance to test your arguments against your opponents, and crucially, you don't get to test their arguments, so you must be a bit disappointed by that.
I'm disappointed. Just unfortunately, this by-election has come up very, very quickly with a very short amount of time, and I know all the candidates have had struggling with existing family commitments. I just could not attend on the day that they were suggesting, unfortunately. But our message is clear, our message is strong. We are listening to the people of Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse. They're telling us clearly the issues that matter to them, and we've got plans that will deliver on those issues.
Well, what are they?
It's the basic things, Colin. It's the things that are impacting people up and down the country. It's cost of living. It's not being able to see a GP or an NHS dentist in good time. It's about failing education standards. It's about, you know, our broken care system. I mean, that aspect.
But what are you offering? But sorry to interrupt you, but what are you offering them as a solution to these things?
Well, we've got a whole range of very positive plans that would deliver on these issues. So take, for example, as I mentioned earlier, GP appointments and NHS dentist appointments, you know, that Russian roulette of the 8 o'clock, 1 o'clock. It is really, really difficult. We have a whole plan in place where we would put specialists in the GP surgeries alongside the GPs, for example, mental health specialists, physiotherapists, etc. And what that would do is reduce the workload of the GPs, which would then allow them to be able to see more people, reducing that Russian roulette time that we have to deal with at the moment.
Which is all very Which is all very well and good, but given that, you know, you've got no great record in this constituency, you lost your deposit last year, what are you going to do this time? What
we always do, deliver. And that's down to the people to put their trust in us. If elected, I will be a voice for the people of the constituency, a strong voice that will deliver on the issues, because these are the issues that are matter to people. We're the only party talking about these issues on the doorstep.
And how would you vote on assisted dying, which is something that an MSP will have to vote on quite soon?
I think assisted dying is a very, very emotive and very challenging subject. I'm grateful that we're actually having the conversation. I think it's long overdue. For me personally, I think it's something that we should look at. But I do believe that there are issues, parts of that bill need to get looked at a little bit more in depth, absolutely. And that's why I think, you know, carrying it forward is a positive thing to do. People deserve dignity in life and in death. And I think this is a conversation that is long overdue.
OK, thanks for joining us in Scotland Tonight. There's a total of 10 candidates standing in the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse Scottish Parliament by-election. Polling stations will be open at 7 o'clock on Thursday morning. And that's all from this special edition of Scotland Tonight. John will be here tomorrow. Good night.